What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to our 100th episode of the Standing Room Only podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in yet again. Today we are going to be talking about some MLB signings. We have free agency underway. We do have the NBA, Klay Thompson eyeing his return. We got some LeBron news. The Bulls are still looking pretty hot, and they are back to 100% as of today. The NFL, we're going to go over Thanksgiving Day games, a couple other key matchups coming up here, and the odd standings that we have currently mid-season. Before we get into it, make sure you are following our social media accounts. We are SR Only Pod. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok as well. You can follow our personal accounts. I'm iGoose with 4 O's, and then we have Healy as well.
You follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the Healy6.
So this is a big one. This is not only a Thanksgiving Day special. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there that's listening. But also it's our 100th episode. We don't have anything crazy planned, but we're just gonna do what we do best. We're gonna do what we do best here.
Pretty much done this for 2 years now. 104 weeks is 2 years, but we have skipped a few weeks here and there. I think we started in October a couple years ago. It's been a fun ride. We went from talking sports whenever we saw each other hanging out, and now we do it weekly.
Yeah, we kind of, I don't want to say joked about having a podcast, but it got thrown around for a while, and finally we decided to do it, and we do it for fun still. But you know, we've had the first 100 episodes have been fun, but I'm looking forward to the next 100 and so on. And some of the other special guests that we will continue to get on the episode, the podcast as well. But Healy, we're gonna start it off. We have some MLB signings. I know we got alerted that Wander Franco got a huge deal with the Rays. I know Kendall Graveman. There's some other ones too, if you want to dig into that.
Yeah, so Steven Matz signed with the Cardinals. I believe it's like a 3-year deal. That's huge for them, especially because they made the playoffs last year. They have a strong roster. 4-year, $44 million, 11 per year, really good. The Angels have had a couple key pickups with Noah Syndergaard. They also took Aaron Loup from the Mets as well. Best lefty in baseball last year as a reliever. Like a 1-point-something ERA. Only allowed 1 homer. And it was to none other than Juan Soto. Lefty on lefty crime. Kendall Graveman to the White Sox. Huge deal. Was it 3 years? 3 years, $24 million, 8 per year. That's really good for them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the big one. Wander Franco. 12 years. $185 million. It goes up to like 223 or something like that.
Yeah, that's huge for a couple of reasons. For one, we know what he's capable of. His ceiling is through the roof. He's proven, I mean, early on to be one of the top prospects, to be one of the top players offensively. Defensively, he's pretty good too. And the Rays basically threw as much cash as they can at somebody, and in a way, they got him for a discount. And we've been seeing this around the league. You know, they see the potential. We've seen it recently with Ronald Acuna and some others. And it's a lot of money. And when you're that young and you're that early into the beginning of your career in Major League Baseball, it's almost impossible to say no to that. It's not worth the risk waiting and saying, hey, I'm going to play out these few years because I know I'm going to be worth double that at some point. I think it's a huge deal, and I think it's a win-win situation because the Rays definitely are going to continue to contend for, I mean, as far as we know, they're going to keep contending for the next few years.
Yeah, 12 years, so Wander's going to be 21 years of age come opening day. He'll be 33 when the deal's done. He'll be 34 the next season. So you still can get a big contract afterward. Now, will he get as lucrative of a deal at that point? Not really, but in 12 years, contracts are going to be way more. There's contracts only get higher and higher as the years go on.
Mm-hmm.
And with these contracts, I had a discussion with someone on Twitter. They were like, so this is going to be an extension after the 4 to 6 years. No, this contract starts next season. Teams have control for 6 service years of a player. Does that mean that they're signed every single year or like signed for a 6-year deal? No, because who knows when those service years are going to be there. And every single year they have to negotiate technically a 1-year contract. It's just the player can't be like, I want to go somewhere else. No, the team, you have to negotiate with the team. And that's why you see some years, especially when players get into arbitration, there's a non-tender deadline, which is actually coming up. And if a player doesn't want to, or a team doesn't want to dish out the money that they're expected to give towards a player, they will make him a free agent. So this starts next year. And also, these long-term deals. He has 70 games played. They hurt in the beginning. The first 3 years of a player's career, they get like 500, maybe $1 million, 500,000, maybe $1 million. Wander's getting paid technically, I don't know what 180 divided by 12 is, but, or 185. That is 15 million a year. Like he probably has some incentives making all-star teams. He's getting paid $15 million per year. Now, you're losing out on $15 million that you could have saved the next couple of years. But in the long run, after 6 years, as Goose said, he'll get double that. He probably would make $30-35 million a year. Mm-hmm. You save a lot. This is also smart for the Rays. He's not going to play this whole contract with the Tampa Bay Rays. He might, but this is good because of how good of a contract is. They will eventually get to a point where they'll trade him. And guess what they'll get back? A huge, huge haul from a team. He's already shown great composure at the plate. He beat out Mickey Mantle for his like on base streak. I don't know if he had like the most all time for like under 21 or something, but he got on base like in 37 games minimum last year. I think he got into the 40s out of his 70 games played. So the discipline's going to be there, and it's a fantastic contract. People are jumping the gun. Injuries can happen, but this is a risk that should be a sure thing.
It's, I would say, a medium risk, high reward. Can we call it that? Like, there's a risk to it. There's always a risk to a long-term deal. I mean, you know, the Dodgers, or I'm sorry, the Padres throwing all their money at Machado, the Phillies throwing all their money at Harper, guys who have obviously been there, done that for a few years leading up to it. So yes, with Wander Franco, I'm sure there's some speculation like, so he played 70 games and that's it. It's like, you got to play the numbers game you got to put your shoes in and look at it from a business perspective. Because if you let him play out, say, a couple of years, and you let him go, and say you pull a Cubs with Chris Bryant, and you're like, you know what, we have all this control, and we'll wait and see what happens. And obviously, he's not going to probably ever play for the Cubs again. Versus, and we see it in other sports too. Baseball, I think, is starting to go that way. We see it with basketball. We see it with the NFL, where after maybe about a year or two, we're seeing these young guys getting huge deals. Now, 70 games is not a lot, but you know what you're going to get. If you see a guy play 70 games, unless he pulls, what was the guy in Baltimore Orioles?
He Cedric got the Mullins. Chris Davis.
Chris Davis. Yeah, like Chris Davis, to me, that's a weird situation. Like, that shouldn't have happened. Like, you're not just talented and then you're not. Baseball is a different type of sport. Yips is real. We talked about it before with throwing. Sometimes it's all about, you know, good streaks, bad streaks. But I feel like Wander Franco being scouted at such a young age, coming through to the big leagues, doing what he did in 70 games, helping this team lead them to another 90-plus win season. And I think he was a big key part of that. And it from a business standpoint, it makes sense to offer this kid, I call him a kid, anybody that's younger than me is a kid, right? It makes sense to give him all of this money because the return on investment is a thing when you are looking at it from the business perspective. And I think they will get a huge return on investment, and the fact that the Rays don't really spend a lot of money as it is, they can spoil themselves here.
And with him only getting paid like 15 million a year, they might keep him at some point. Blake Snell did get paid 10 million per year, and they decided to just dump his salary. The Rays, I think, only had like $80 million on payroll. They might have had 40 million on payroll last year. That'd be a third of their payroll right there. Who knows? Maybe they keep him for a couple years, but I would not be surprised if Wander gets traded and he plays a majority of this contract for a different.
We've seen it. We've seen it happen a lot with other guys historically. Unless maybe not though. You never know. Mike Trout's been with the Angels his whole career. So
yeah, but the Angels are willing to pay people.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only difference. Two different type of styles of leadership, I guess you can call it, or business. But yeah, I think that I he's good. He's obviously, we know what we're gonna get from him. And when I say we, I mean we know what we're gonna see.
Exactly. The lockout will probably happen before next episode. Actually, it's supposed to happen on the 1st. If we record on the 30th, we're going to have a good understanding of it at that point. Next episode could be the lockout episode. So be ready for that and what's to come. We'll have more info on that next week. Move over to basketball or football.
Let's jump over to we'll wrap it up with NFL. Let's jump to the NBA. We got some, obviously we're still early in the season. We've gotten through roughly 14 games. I could be wrong. But let me see. 12 and 6, 18 games.
Yeah.
18 games. And there's not really, I don't want to say that there's any surprise teams. I know we mentioned it before. Brooklyn's starting to look more like Brooklyn. James Harden's starting to get his fouls. We mentioned that. One of the big things is now with the standings, let me pull it up here. Well, one of the first things I want to talk about is the fact that LeBron James and Isaiah Stewart, that was nuts. That was almost another Malice in the Palace version 2.0. They were, LeBron was trying to box out Isaiah Stewart at the free throw line for a rebound. Isaiah Stewart was boxing him out. LeBron did not like it and threw a blatant back fist to basically express that he was upset. And Isaiah Stewart has had some chippy situations this year. We saw, obviously, with LeBron. We saw it with Blake Griffin at the beginning of the season. He got into it with him. It's one of the dirtiest plays I've seen by LeBron. And anybody who's listening, I'm probably the most biased for LeBron James. Arguably he's my top 3 for obvious reasons. I'll go to bat for him any day of the week when it comes to defending against the haters. But this was one of the dirtiest plays I've ever seen LeBron. One of the most dirtiest plays I've ever seen. He threw the back fist. Anybody who saw the pictures on social media, you saw Isaiah Stewart's eye was just gushing blood. I'm sure him getting heated, causing his blood pressure to rise, didn't help with the leaking either. And eventually it led to Isaiah Stewart just pulling his best Derrick Henry impersonation and destroying his coaching staff, trying to hold him back. And of course, LeBron was being held back. Russell Westbrook got teed up, which he was kind of confused, and I don't know why he was confused. I think if you're throwing your hands up, getting ready to box somebody, it falls in the line of a technical. Shout out to the Lakers for sticking up for LeBron, because regardless of what he did, they did stick up for him, and that's what you want as a teammate. That was crazy. LeBron suspended for 1 game.
First
and Isaiah
time
Stewart
he
for
got
2.
ejected and I think suspended in his career.
Yeah, he's normally...
Wait, he probably got ejected in his career, but definitely his first suspension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can't let one incident judge somebody's character because of everything he's done. Obviously, off the court, and on the court as well. He's normally... I know a lot of people, they tend to hate on LeBron. Like, you love to play with him, hate to play against him. That's why he's got so many haters, because generally the teams that are have fans against him. He does good things against you, and then it's gonna happen. It's love of the game, but I think this is definitely a growing opportunity. I don't think LeBron trying to reach out to Isaiah Stewart after the game is gonna change the fact. Anthony Davis saying, I believe it was Anthony Davis saying, well, he's never done this before. He's a good player. It was a dirty play, and nothing's gonna change that. He deserved a suspension. He's got to deal with that, and just they just got to keep trucking. They're having a tough year. They are having a tough year. They cannot afford more games off for LeBron outside of his routine maintenance. Now that he's becoming a grandfather at this point,
It's definitely a frustration foul too.
It is.
They were losing at that point.
They were struggling against the Pistons, and I don't know if the Lakers are going to finish top 3 at this point. I feel like that they still have the talent to go on a 15-game win streak at any given moment. But that's tough. And it says a lot. It says a lot about LeBron being that frustrated to maybe he didn't think he was going to hit him in his face. Maybe he thought, I'm just going to throw my fist and see what happens. I don't know what he was thinking. But to me, there's a bigger picture there. This team is not that good. Westbrook, I'm not putting him down. He's a great basketball player. He brought them back in that game along with Anthony Davis. They won the game against the Pistons, which is, that's a tough pill to swallow. You almost lost to the Pistons. But Westbrook is not. He's only good when he's by himself. I'm realizing when he's forced to take over.
Which is why they won when LeBron exited the game.
Yeah. And so it's weird, and it's nothing bad against Westbrook because he is a good player. And it's not that he can't play well with other guys, because we've seen him do it with Durant back in the day. But we've seen Durant go elsewhere and win. We've seen other guys join up with LeBron and win. Where Westbrook joins arguably 2 of the best players in the last 10 years, him included, and they're struggling. I know it's still early, and NBA is a game of chemistry, and chemistry builds over time during the season. Get a couple win streaks going. Guys are having fun. It's going to be a huge factor. But it's very interesting to see how bad the Lakers are playing as a unit with LeBron on the court as well.
Yeah, let's see. I want to see them go on a streak because of how much talent. They're 9-10. I didn't even realize they're below 500. I thought they would be like 10-8, something around there. But they are below 500, 4-6. It definitely hurt that LeBron was out for a few games. Yeah, I put them at 3. They might finish at like 5th or below. I don't see them being like the final couple teams, but they might not be in the top half of the West.
Right now, no. So they're 9th seed. So they have they would technically qualify for the play-in, which the play-in tournament, as you guys already know, is 7 through 10. Grizzlies are 7th. Nuggets are 8th. Nuggets they played a couple games, I believe, without Jokic. It's not a serious injury. Obviously, they're still waiting for the return of Jamal Murray. Don't know if we're going to get him this season. So they are going to struggle a little bit. Timberwolves are at 10. They've actually played some pretty damn good basketball this year so far in a few games. So we'll see what ends up happening. I just don't know. The Clippers are playing pretty well. I could see them eventually dropping off only because I just don't think Paul George can. You can't just rely on him. The duo of Paul George and Reggie Jackson night in and night out. I do think Reggie Jackson's good. I think he is underrated. I think he falls in line with like the Dennis Schroeder of the league, who is also an underrated, pretty efficient point guard. But yeah, the Clippers are one of those teams that could fall, and the Trailblazers, they've been pretty good. They obviously were down 20 last week against the Bulls, and I think it's back-to-back years now where they had a crazy good fourth quarter. Dame Lillard still has to get it going. So anything could happen in the West. It's just so far, I would say the Lakers are a surprise team. And the only reason why I'm kind of awkwardly saying surprise is because they have been without LeBron.
A good thing happened for the Bulls. They are facing the Rockets for one. The Rockets are 1-16, but they finally have Nikola Vucevic back and Alex Caruso, who was out for a few games. I thought Vuce was only going to be out for like 6 games or so, like that 10-day stretch. It really hurt when he was done for more than that stretch.
It was fun. It was weirdly fun because we had guards in at all time. We literally had Alex Caruso starting at the power forward, grabbing boards like it was his job, which obviously dude's a ball of energy, very talented. We lost him. He missed the last game, and the Bulls got mollywopped by the Indiana Pacers, which are a team that flies under the radar. They generally fly under the radar. They're a good team. Miles Turner at the center, who is a sneaky three-point shooter. Domantas Sabonis is obviously great. Karis LeVert, now that he's back and going, they have. I love Malcolm Brogdon. Malcolm Brogdon actually is one of my. I'm not going to say he's a most improved candidate because there's some other players, but Malcolm Brogdon, to me, is a steal. The fact that he landed in the Pacers when he was with Milwaukee, not really performing, and seeing what he's able to do, he's a triple-double threat every single night. Dude he can shoot the 3 ball. His inside game is great. He grabs boards and he can dish it out, and he has a good team around him. So, yeah, the Bulls did get destroyed, and they were hurting because they were without Vucevic, they were without Caruso. Kobe White's still kind of getting it going, but the Bulls are finally full strength. Against Houston, who, as of right now, Houston going into this game, they're 1-16, like you mentioned. Their point differential is negative 11.2. Where the Bulls are a plus 3.2, the over-under on this one, or I'm sorry, the spread, they have the Bulls at 10.5. On my parlay, I am going to go Bulls minus 7.5. I'm not going to take the 11-point spread, the 10.5, but I will say they will cover at least 8 points. Hint, hint. So make sure you guys, if you want to add that to your parlay, you can thank me later. But yeah, Bulls are they're fully stacked. I think with Vucevic back and Caruso back, we're going to see some big games from these guards now that they have a man in the middle.
I just got reminded on Twitter about this. I wanted to talk about them. The Suns. Do you know what type of win streak they're on at the moment?
Are they up to 14?
They're at 13 right now. They started off the season 1-3. They're up to 14-3.
Yes.
And they've won some pretty decent games. They had a couple of cupcake games in there. Got to win those, but they have won trying to find their complete.
I'm going to go ahead and sell. I'm selling. I think that their schedule, they've had some hand-me-outs, some major hand-me-outs. There was maybe 2 or 3 good games that they played against guys at full strength, at teams at full strength, but I don't think now. Yeah, I don't think the Phoenix Suns are actually as good as their record shows. And I've been saying this for the last year. I think they're really good. I think with Devin Booker still developing, which is kind of scary because I don't think he's reached his max potential yet. They are very good in the West, and you can't deny. I mean, 13, 14 game win streak, 13 game win streak like that is incredible. But if we look back, they beat up on a Spurs team, which obviously the Spurs are going to have a bad year this year. They really don't have anybody. They beat the Nuggets without Jokic. They're obviously ready without Jamal Murray. They beat the Mavericks back-to-back without Luka in both games. Timberwolves is a good win. I think the Timberwolves are very talented. They did give them a tough matchup. The Rockets, they beat up on, which we expected. They beat up on them in the first matchup earlier in the season. They did stomp out on the Grizzlies and the Trailblazers. To me, those are key matchups there because those are potential playoff matchups, and both teams were full strength. They were healthy. So I do look at those matchups as saying, okay, so they're playing some tough teams. And then the Hawks. There was only 3 matchups in this 13-game win streak where I would say, okay, they played good basketball against good teams, but the rest with the Mavericks not having Luka and Jokic not having Denver, it's hard to be. I cannot be bought on the Suns yet.
Also, the Hawks that they beat, that was during their like 0-6 stretch on the West Coast.
Oh, I forgot that they had their stretch too, because yeah. Trae Young, actually, that was a good game. That was a really good game. Trae Young played very well. Devin Booker dropped 38 in that game. Actually shot very, very efficiently. And this is where, like, you get Devin Booker more times than not, at least in the last season or two, he'll go on a good stretch where he's shooting very efficient. Shoots lights out, gets to the line. And then obviously you'll have some games where you're like, whoa, 6 for 21, 6 for 22. He's been pretty efficient in the stretch. Devin Booker has been definitely a key factor there. Did Atlanta have, yeah, they had John Collins. Clint Capella was playing in that game. So they were full strength. But like you said, coming off that West Coast trip, it's tough for teams in the East. We know that just watching the Bulls over the last, I don't know how many years, going out to the West has been it's been a problem. Obviously they did good this year, but I don't want to discredit the Suns. They're good. They're good. I'm just not sold on that win streak yet.
Okay. Besides that, the only really good team has been Golden State. Then after that, the divisions or the standings are kind of mixed here and there. A few games separating a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll start to see it probably after the holidays, after the Christmas Day games, going into maybe first couple weeks of January. We'll start to see a divide. We'll start to kind of see that top four with 5 and 6 kind of lingering around there, and then we'll see what teams last through then. But the Warriors, to me, best team hands down offensively, lights out shooting. Jordan Poole has been scary. Steph Curry's been scary. Andrew Wiggins has, to me, offensively, he's been pretty damn good. And the defense is good. And Klay Thompson is eyeing his return in a few weeks.
What day?
I don't think they have a day yet, but it's closer to the holidays. So Christmas Day games around that time, give or take a week or so. He's coming off a major injury. But the videos of him shooting lights out in pregame warmups, his corner three, he looks like he didn't lose a beat. I know LeBron actually retweeted a video of him shooting, and he's like, he's excited to see him back. But realistically, I don't think the league is excited to see Klay Thompson back, because now you're going to have Jordan Poole maybe coming off the bench doing what he does. You have Draymond Green, Kuminga, who is incredible of a rookie when he gets the actual playing time. This team to me is going to be dead. They're already considerably one of the best. I would say many teams can't compete with them in a series when it comes down to it. But if Klay Thompson comes back even at 75-80% of what he normally can do, watch out. I don't see this team really being stopped in the playoffs at that point.
The defense is just going to get even better.
Exactly.
Defense and offense is going to get better from that.
They're just clicking, and you know, we talked about it before. I think Draymond Green doesn't get enough credit. I think he's one of the best teammates I've ever seen that kind of keeps guys together. We do see it on other teams. Obviously Chris Paul with the Suns. These guys that are a little bit older, they've been around the block. But Draymond Green, at least when he's been mic'd up, I've always been eager to listen to what he has to say and what he's telling these young guys, because these young guys are thriving. It's not just Steph Curry. There was a game where Steph Curry, I think, would drop like 17, 18 points because Jordan Poole's shooting lights out, drops 32, 33 points in a game, and they win. Like, to me, that's scary, because that says, oh, they have a complete team. This isn't all about Steph Curry draining 8 threes every single night to keep them in a game. They don't have to do that. And with the return of Klay Thompson, I don't know who is going to really be able to compete with them in a series.
I saw a cool moment. Well, I don't know, but I saw a video on Twitter last night of Draymond Green. He's very talkative on the court. He'll tell people what they need to do. He'll yell at them. It's a good thing. And I saw Jordan Poole like yelling at him back. And to the average person, you might think, oh, these guys are clashing. No, that means that they have good chemistry and they're just communicating, and their love for the game is just at an all-time high for like a competitor.
Yeah, I think it goes to show Draymond especially would rather have a guy bark back and like spit facts or whatever it is versus just being passive. Draymond's not that type of leader. He wants his team to be vocal. I mean, the best type of teams are guys that aren't just like, okay. No, open up your mind, because that's how IQ gets spread. That's how the chemistry builds. And I think that he's got it going on.
Yeah, and like if one of the guys is wrong, they'll realize it, they'll own up. Draymond, I think it was a foul call on Jordan Poole, but you could be like, why do you foul? You don't do that here. And Jordan Poole's like, this guy's not a great free throw shooter. I did it this way. And then Draymond, if he was wrong, Draymond could be like, no, you do this next time, instead of like, yo, don't do that. He's like, okay, without any reason for like him doing it. Or it's like, oh, whatever. Like, I know what I'm doing.
It's a good thing when your teammates could take criticism.
Yes.
But that's pretty much it with the NBA. I don't think that they have holiday games for Thanksgiving. They do a Christmas Day special, which I'm looking forward to. I don't think so,
because the NFL has such a big day.
Yeah, which, speaking of the NFL, we are going to transition over there. The NFL, if you guys are listening to this, it is Thanksgiving Day. We have some NFL games coming up here. On Thanksgiving, we have the Bears at Detroit. The Vegas Raiders are in Dallas. So your usual suspects on Thanksgiving. Then you have Buffalo and New Orleans, who are without Kamara. Once again, obviously already without Jameis Winston out for the year. Matchups, typical. I think the matchups should be better on Thanksgiving. You know everybody's tuning in. Let's get Green Bay on Thanksgiving. Let's get the Rams on Thanksgiving. I like the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. But can we get Detroit? Can we not allow Detroit to play another Thanksgiving game until they go back-to-back at least 500 game seasons? Like, I need them to do something. It's hard to sit there and watch the Lions on Thanksgiving. Granted, they do compete randomly on Thanksgiving pretty well, but get them off the Thanksgiving schedule.
We already have the turkey putting us to sleep. We don't need these football games to put us to sleep as well.
Exactly. I got 2 Thanksgivings tomorrow, 2 Thanksgiving dinners, extra turkey. So you know what that means. It's Detroit. I don't know. It's hard. I don't want to say anything bad about Detroit, but the record speaks for itself. And it's almost like every year. And I understand it's tradition, but let's switch tradition up. The NBA doesn't keep the same teams on Christmas. They generally put 2 very good matchups of what could be potential playoffs or finals. We've seen Cavs Warriors historically when LeBron was with the Cavs.
Nets and Kyrie. Lakers this year.
Nets Lakers this year. I mean, the matchups are and it's smart. You know, nobody's going to work, or maybe they're working a half day or whatever it may be. But a lot of more people are tuning in, and you're going to force them to watch these games.
You got Hawks Knicks, which was a playoff matchup last year, a good one, especially.
Are they in New York?
In New York.
Yes.
That's to start off. You have Boston and the Bucks. So that's another good matchup. You have the Warriors Suns, which the Warriors are really good, and the Suns made it to the finals last year.
Yep.
Nets Lakers. And then the nighttime game, you have to have a West Coast game. Mavericks Jazz, which a playoff matchup.
That could be a good matchup. I like that. Every single matchup's good, though. That's the point. I saw that it was on social media, somebody asked, who does it better, the NFL on Thanksgiving or NBA on Christmas Day? I think like everybody agreed that they love football on Thanksgiving, but they hate the matchups. The matchups are a joke, and they always have been. To me, Christmas Day, NBA blows it out of the water.
Especially because they have it running all day. Football does the same thing. It's running all day. Doesn't really overlap. But the best matchup is normally the one that they put together themselves. It's not the holiday matchups where you have to have Detroit and you have to have Dallas. New Orleans, Buffalo, decent matchup. It's good for a Thursday night game. But with Thanksgiving being so early in the day and people going over to others' houses at like noon, 1, 2 o'clock, they eat at 3, 7 p.m. or 8:20 Eastern. That's too late. People are driving home. They're like done for the day. They aren't sitting down and watching that game. I don't know a day or Thanksgiving in which I actually watched that night game.
I never do. I follow it. Like, I'll use, like, my sports app. I'll check in on the score because, for fantasy purposes, you always want to know. But I never, the matchups aren't good enough. They're not good enough. Green Bay randomly will play on Thanksgiving. I think we've seen Pittsburgh here and there. But, I mean, even like the Bears on Thanksgiving, and this is nothing against the Bears. I think that it's Bears in Detroit. Maybe, obviously the schedule gets created ahead of time. Detroit, I don't think anybody expected to really not win any games up to this point. I think everybody expected the Bears to be a little bit better, Justin Fields to be doing his thing. Obviously is not the case, and it's all about scheduling too. It's not like they scheduled it last week, but they know there's always the elite teams. You know that there's elite teams that you can just throw on for entertainment purposes.
They need to do a better job, but with how much of a tradition it has been, I just don't see it changing.
Mm-mm.
And maybe it's better that, like, I don't know. I was gonna say maybe it's better that it's bad matchups because on Sunday we actually get decent ones and we don't have to watch some of these garbage teams. But it's a holiday. Yep. You're at families' places. Football, the TV is gonna be on regardless.
Yeah. Speaking of Sunday, some good matchups. Actually, before we even get into the matchups, this is going to kind of tie in together. The NFL going into this week, now that this is going to be week 12, if I'm not mistaken. The standings. The Bills have looked not like the Bills. We have Jonathan Taylor all of a sudden is like the MVP favorite, which he's been good all year. He had some good moments last year too in his rookie season.
Wisconsin alumni.
Yep. You have the Bucks, who did win this past week but lost the week before to Washington. You have the Cardinals still in first place, even though Kyler Murray is about to miss his third or fourth game, whatever it is. The standings are kind of weird. The Patriots are in first place ahead of the Bills. In the AFC East, they're 7-4. They have technically the half game lead above the Bills. Patriots are 5-0 in their last 5. They are incredible. They're 2-4 at home, which is odd. They lost all their games that they lost were at home. They're 5-0 on the road. In the division, they're 2-1. The Bills are 3-0. Bills are 3-2 on both at home and on the road as well. Very, very weird standings. Tennessee, without Derrick Henry, we don't know what's going to happen. We saw that they just cut Adrian Peterson. Obviously, not much work being done from him, so they did end up cutting him. They're still in first, but the Colts are right there. They're 2 games behind. Titans are 8-3. Colts are 6-5. I think the Colts could sneak up in this division, but it all depends. I think the Titans, as long as that defense keeps forcing turnovers and doing what they've been doing the last few weeks, all you need is Tannehill to manage the game and let your backs by committee do their thing. They still have a great offensive line. They're still able to run the ball. Obviously not 40 times from Derrick Henry every night, but I think Tennessee and the Colts are definitely an interesting standing so far, on top of AFC West as well. The AFC in general is weird.
Yeah, you have 12 teams with 5 wins or more in the AFC. Dolphins are barely missing out on that. They do have, like, I was going to say some of the worst teams, but the NFC also has really bad teams at the bottom, inflating, but you can't really pick out a top 6 or 7 at the moment. It's going to come down to the final few weeks, and football is about to get very, very watchable. over the next couple weeks, and hopefully we have some good matchups and in that case.
I know this week alone has a couple of key matchups. Some of the matchups aren't the greatest, but one of the games must watch TV. Tennessee and New England, two of the teams we were just talking about. Excuse me. New England is home, where they've lost all the games that they've lost. Tennessee is arguably 1-2 in the AFC. New England is arguably 1-2. I can't tell who's the better team, and this is going to be a key matchup that we could potentially end up seeing in the playoffs as well. That's 12 o'clock on Sunday. Definitely a game to look out for. Tennessee right now, they're 4-1 on the road. So if we go by Tennessee's road record and New England's home record, Tennessee to me seems like the better option. But actually going into this game, if we look at the odds, they're giving New England a 7-point spread. So that's a heavy favorite right there. And simply because they are home. 7-point spread is a little
And they're
much.
on a 5-game win streak.
And the defense is just ridiculous. I mean, they are beating up quarterbacks. Mac Jones is doing his thing. Mac Jones isn't even like, I don't want to see he's lighting it up. He's doing his job and he's doing it so well. He's just making the right plays, staying efficient. That is definitely one key matchup to look out for on Sunday. And the other one, to me, is a must-watch, another potential playoff matchup for this year, a rematch of last year's playoffs. You have the LA Rams in Lambeau facing Green Bay, two of the NFC's top dogs right now. 325 game, must-watch.
Yeah, and then you have the Sunday night slot with Cleveland and Baltimore. The AFC North, I'm going to take a look right here. I think that's the most competitive division at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have the Cleveland Browns at the bottom, and they're 6-5. And you have the Ravens atop the division at 7-3. You have 6-4, 5-4-1, the Steelers and Bengals. So division matchups are a must win. You plan on only watching 3 games, take up your whole day on Sunday. There's your matchups. Tennessee, New England, Green Bay, LA, and Cleveland, Baltimore.
Yeah, it's going to be a big matchup there because Cleveland is still very talented. I think that if Lamar Jackson does end up playing, I'm sure he will. He missed the last game against Chicago that they ended up pulling off with Hundley as the backup that was starting. I still think Baltimore I would go Baltimore in this game. I believe Baltimore's favorited they're favorited 3.5 points. If Cleveland loses this game, this is where we see Baltimore take off with that division. If Baltimore loses, Cleveland gets that's a huge momentum swing right there. That's major momentum. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this game.
Is Lamar Jackson going to be back?
That's the question. He was sick, not COVID related. He had an illness. Lamar Jackson, I assume.
He says he's confident he'll play 5 hours ago.
There we go. That's all we needed. It wasn't COVID related, so there's no 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever with multiple tests. He was just sick, cold, whatever you want to call it. And he still has a few more days I'm sure he'll be able to practice, at least walk through. And then going against Cleveland, which he's seen plenty of times. It's a divisional matchup, a divisional rivalry. So we'll see Baker Mayfield versus Lamar Jackson Sunday night. It should be a good football game.
I can't believe Baltimore beat Bears last week. Baltimore did have Justin Tucker. He pretty much won them the game.
I like how there was rumors that Matt Nagy was going to get fired after their Thanksgiving game Thursday. The McCaskies came out and said they denied that as being true, which would be kind of weird to say, hey, media, guess what? We're going to fire Matt Nagy after this game Thursday. Why wouldn't they just fire him and have their interim? I mean, there's always the next man up. They've had somebody else step up when he had COVID. So apparently he's not getting fired. Would not make sense. You might as well let him play out the rest of the year. See what happens. Andy Dalton more than likely is starting on Thursday. Justin Fields having the ribs injury. I don't even know if he broke his ribs or what it was, but he's didn't practice. He's doubtful to play. I say let Andy Dalton get a few games in. I'm not going to say he's more talented than Fields because he's not. I feel like athletic-wise, just ability, I do think Justin Fields has more to offer. It's just with how weird this play calling is, I just feel like Dalton is more efficient. You just need a game manager at this point and someone who can make the right throws given the play calling and the pressure that defenses keep applying on these quarterbacks. So we'll see what ends up happening in this game. If the Bears lose to the Lions, I don't even know if you let Nagy finish off the seasons. Teams have fired coaches midway through the season. So
at this point, being 3-7, I think they're just going to let him ride. Also, with Justin Fields, you don't want to rush anything with. This is a lost season. This is just a development season for him. Don't bring him back and have him get hurt more. There's no reason.
Yeah, I agree. This team could still end up making the playoffs, though. As weird as it sounds, with the extra week and the extra wildcard team, anything is possible, especially with the defense. And Roquan Smith has been out of his mind this season. I think the last game he had like 15 tackles, if not more. And he's been doing this every single week. The only downside is Khalil Mack is out. I think he's out for the year now. He had surgery on his foot. That's a huge bummer because I felt like he was turning it around this year. He's been quiet in the last couple seasons, which I had my reasons as to why I think he was quiet is they were always on the field. The offense couldn't move the ball, but Bears could sneak in. They could definitely sneak their way in.
I like the optimism. I don't think they will, but I like the optimism.
I try for Chicago, even though I'm a cheesehead.
Well,
so anyways, did we miss anything? Did we talk? I think that's pretty much it for the NFL too.
Yeah. Not too much
wrap it up.
News in the podcast this week. 47 minutes, kind of a shorter episode, but yeah,
not a problem.
Appreciate everyone that's listened this long into the podcast. Hope you have a good Thanksgiving. You're listening to this on your drive to your family's place. Appreciate it. Give me a lot of traffic.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. As always, stay safe. Uber if you have to, if you're going out partying, whatever you're doing. And we will see you guys next week. Episode 101 next week. Get ready. The first 100's down. Next 100's ready to go.